The Jimmy Z Show.
Gotta go through it. We're gonna have to cross the Red Sea. We're talking about some blood. Bloodshed. Bloodshed. Blood being spilled. Bloodshed. Bloodshed. We're talking about blood. 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 Bloodshed. Blood. Bloodshed. Blood. Blood, bloodshed, blood, bloodshed. We're talking about some blood.
Derp, 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 derpy derp, 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 derpy derpy derp, a derp, derp, derpy derp, derp, derpy derp, a derpy derpy derp, 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 derp.
Why do the hosts go on talking? Why does the show still go on? Don't they know it's the end of the world? 'Cause this bastard is our president. Why do the choirs go on singing? Why do the children still play? Don't they know it's the end of the world? It ended when that bastard was elected.
Jimmy?
When the 5 o'clock whistle blows, so do I.
I understand it, but it doesn't mean I respect it.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Jimmy Z, the Big Jimmy Z Show. I am Jimmy Z. We agree on everything, unless you're wrong. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I am upright. I was, it was about a week ago, and my lower back went out. I mean, that's the term everybody uses. My lower back went out. But what it is it's kind of a muscle spasm that lays me up for a number of days. So I didn't go to work. I couldn't sit up. And I can sit up now for a bit. So we'll probably do this show in a number of sittings because I'll take a break and go lay down again. But I guess the worst of it wasn't really completely debilitating. I've had it before where I had horrible back spasms. I mean, I would be laying in bed and I was frozen and this was only one time it was this bad. But I was frozen in bed because I didn't dare move. I was afraid to move because every time if I went to move one leg into another position, my lower back spasmed so painfully that I was crying. It was so bad. And it was like that for about a day and a half. And it finally let up. I didn't know if it was ever going to let up. It was really bad. I couldn't stand up to go to the bathroom. So I had a plastic cup. Okay. And too much information? Yeah, I know. Okay. But this time it wasn't nearly so bad. I could get up a number of times a day, go to the bathroom, get some ibuprofen, drink some water, And the first couple of days were pretty stiff. And so I called up. I need to set up, by the way, one of these. Excuse me. I had something in my mouth. I need to set up one of these companies like Uber Eats so that I can just have my credit card already set up with them and call them or use the app, whatever it is, and send over some food. As it is, I have an account over at not Subway. What am I thinking of? Domino's. So I had Domino's bring over a baked sandwich. The baked Italian sandwich is really delicious. And then I had a pizza, and then I had a salad, and boy, those deliveries from Domino's can get very expensive. So anyway, that was helpful for a couple of days, and then I felt like I could get in the car. It was difficult, but I can get in my car easier in this car than I could the previous smaller cars, because the roof line is higher, so I can just simply sit, stick my butt in the car and then turn sideways and drive the car. Anyway, so I am getting better. I'm not going to sit too long because I don't want to inflame the back difficulty. But because I was somewhat mobile, I was able to get up. I took it easy and I didn't go to work, even though I may have been able to sit for like an hour and then stand up and stretch or lie down on the sofa. I have a sofa in my office, but, that's no way to work. So I took the days off. There wasn't any big emergency going on, thank God. But I ended up taking more vacation time than I would have liked because it's only the end of April. But whatever, it is what it is. There you go. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Donald Trump and the coronavirus. There are people who are still saying that Trump was foolish and that he was attacking Asian people by calling the coronavirus the Chinese virus and the Chinese flu. That's what it is. Okay, that's where it came from. If it came from Yugoslavia, it would be the Yugoslavian flu or the Yugoslavian virus. If it came from Texas, it would be the Texas virus. If it came from India, it would be the Indian virus. If it came from Canada, it would be the Canadian virus, the Canadian coronavirus. If it came from France, it would be the French virus. But it did not. It came from China. So we call it the Chinese virus. And I applaud Trump for that, by the way. He didn't back down. He kept calling it the Chinese virus because that's what it is. If it had come from Japan, he would have called it the Japanese virus. And if it had come from, England, he would call it the English virus. If it had come from Germany, he would call it the German virus. And if it came from Brazil, it would have been called the Brazilian virus or the soccer virus. But it didn't. It didn't come from any of those places. It came from China. And so Donald Trump called it correctly the Chinese virus. And I can't believe some people are still hung up on saying that Trump is the reason why Asian people are being attacked. There's this big push to attack Asian people in America because Trump called the virus the Chinese virus. That is absolute nonsense. And in fact, everything that is coming from Democrats, everything that's coming from the left and leftist activists and Democrats in office, everything coming out of the White House, the potato in chief, everything coming from all of these people is nonsense. They are telling us lies constantly that Asian people are under attack. And in fact, I wrote to this friend of mine because I thought this was pretty important. I said the left is going crazy trying to get Chinese people and Asian people to join the black people and fight against white people. And that's what this is all about. But what they don't understand is Asian folks, I wrote here, Asian people, Asian folks don't think like black people do. Asians are incredibly self-sufficient. They work hard. They have strong family ties. And of course, all of this is for the most part. Obviously, there are some exceptions. But Asian people don't blame others for the bad stuff that happens to them. And so you're never going to have Asian people joining up with black people and Hispanic people and other minorities to blame white people for the bad things that happen to them. That's ridiculous. So anyway, I think we're done with the Chinese music. I just wanted to say that we call it the Chinese virus because it is the Chinese virus. All right, everybody, I got my mixer, and my mixer is sitting in the box that it came in my office underneath the entryway stairs, because at this point in time, I cannot pick it up. I cannot lean over my desk and hook it up. I cannot do anything with it, so there it sits. But hey, you know what? I've got a decent lavalier microphone that makes my voice sound pretty studly, so we'll have to wait for that. Probably another week at least, because I'm not going to take a chance lifting, because you know you got to stand in front of the desk and lift and push forward, and that kind of motion with a lower back problem is very bad. So we'll have to wait. We'll have to be patient. But hey, at least I can do a show, which it's been a week since I did a show. The last program was last Saturday, and now it's Sunday, April 25th, and we're finally doing a show. Now, I've got a lot to talk about and a lot of audio and things to read about the shooting of Makia. I forget her last name. I guess if I say Makia, everybody knows what I'm talking about, but this whole thing is so ridiculous, so pathetic, so troubling. And I am so tired of the activists telling us that there is a problem with the police departments. There is not. Okay, there might be a problem with an officer or two. There might be an exception, but for the most part, police do a great job. And I'm going to stand behind the police. I'm going to fly the flag of the thin blue line, and I am not going to trash the police department. I read somewhere that Candace Owens said that she would be okay with the police officer, is his last name Chauvin? The guy who shot George Floyd and was found guilty of 3 different violations, 3 different charges, 3 different counts, but they're all basically the same thing. And I've got that, I got that here on my phone, and I want to read that because it's important. Let me see if I can find my messaging from Mia. Maybe it's not here. No, I guess not. Darn it. Anyway, there were 3 kinds of murder, I guess. The 3 kinds of taking a life. There was second degree involuntary manslaughter, or God, I can't remember. I should look it up. Okay, hang on a second. I will. Okay, this will be better because, I want to sound like I'm semi-intelligent when I'm talking on the stupid show. Okay, he was convicted of 3 things: second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. Okay, so here's my question. How can you have all 3? It seems to me it should be one or the other or the other. That if this was second-degree murder, I don't see how it can also be third-degree murder at the same time. And if it was second-degree manslaughter, how can it be third-degree murder? I know you follow what I'm saying here. I'm not a lawyer, but this doesn't make sense. And I expect that the jury was afraid to find him not guilty on anything. Because we've already heard from one juror who turned out to be an alternate. I guess the jurors don't know if they're alternates or not. They all sit there. And she ended up being one of the alternative jurors. And she said that she was concerned about her family, about her home. If they found him not guilty, what was going to happen? They were also concerned about what would happen to America's cities, billions and billions and billions of dollars in damage from people burning down buildings. And who knows how many people would die getting hit with a brick in their head, because these people were threatening to go hog wild with violence and destruction if they didn't get the verdict they wanted. And so she said, I was afraid my family and my home, we might be attacked. I think there's a very good argument now for keeping the names of jurors in cases like this absolutely anonymous. And only the judge and perhaps the attorneys would know who the jurors were, but you can't have a leak. You cannot have a leak because these days people cannot put their lives and their families and their homes at risk because they're on a jury. We simply can't have this. So I just don't understand all 3 of those. It would seem to me the jury should have picked one and said, okay, this was very, very serious. We find him guilty of second-degree murder. Or, the second-degree murder conviction. Or they would think, okay, well, look, he didn't do this on purpose. He didn't set out to kill this man, so we'll give him second-degree manslaughter. But all 3 of these, it sounds like piling on to me. And now somebody else has come along and said, okay, well, we're gonna sue him, or we're gonna try him at the federal level. I guess the feds are going to do an investigation, and there's some other time that he supposedly hurt somebody, or he hurt somebody and infringed on their personal liberties. And God, I am so tired of it. I am so freaking tired of it. Here's the answer. Avoid a life of crime, a life of violent crime. Just stop. Stop the crime and start raising your children to avoid crime. And stop the drug use. Stop using drugs. What is it? Fentanyl is like 100 times as strong as morphine. And that's what this guy was on? And we're supposed to ignore that, of course, because he was such a great guy. And his brother's on TV talking about how, this makes me feel so much better that we got the right verdict. And, you got Nancy Pelosi saying that that George Floyd sacrificed his life for justice. No, he didn't. He spent his whole life as an adult as a criminal, a violent criminal. This guy is not to be celebrated. George Floyd is no hero. I'm sorry, but he was a piece of crap. There was nothing redemptive about his life. He was not turning things around. And I'll tell you something else. They put together a donation drive after he was killed by police. This was one decent thing that happened. They put together a donation drive, and now his daughter has a big fund for a college education. And she'll probably become a lawyer and fight for black resistance or whatever. She'll become a left-wing lawyer. And a politician. She can be a politician as the daughter of George Floyd, and she'll be elected to office and continue the fight to destroy America. But she's better off without her father ruining her life. Did he deserve to die? No, but he invested in what happened to him. Had somebody else telling me, oh, well, you should talk to Officer Chauvin, and you should ask him if he thinks it was worthwhile. I have a better idea. Let's talk to George Floyd, wherever he is right now. And I don't know that he's in the good place, but whatever. Let's find out if he thought it was worth dying for. That if he thought it was worth being to sacrifice his life for crime. He didn't sacrifice his life for justice, like Nancy Pelosi said. No. He spent his whole life being a criminal. So frustrating. So I think what I'm going to do here is start with Candace Owens talking about George Floyd and Makia, what's her name? Because that's the other one I still got to talk about in detail. Makia, who was about to thrust a knife into another girl, and police shot her. A police officer shot her dead, and she deserved it. And the police officer acted, he had about 4/10 of a second. 4/10 of a second to decide what to do. And he did it, and he saved a life. This police officer is a hero. And for some reason, Adobe Audition is acting really weird. I hate this. I hate it so much I could scream. Ah! Anyway, here's Candace Owens. This is rather lengthy, but very, very important.
It's Audio Mayhem!
Hello and welcome. And we can just get right into this because you know what we are going to cover today. We obviously have to cover the George Floyd trial conclusion, which is that Derek Chauvin is guilty on all counts. And I have to appreciate people that were trying to create a pressure campaign for me on Twitter saying, I wonder what Candace is going to say. Even Republicans agreed that this was the right call. I don't care who agrees that this was the right. I don't care if it's a Republican. I don't care if it's a Democrat. I don't care if it's a white person. I don't care if it's a black person. I am not so much of an intellectual coward that because the mob decides something, because the lie about George Floyd and the way that he lived his life has become so big that we just have to now accept it as the truth. And believe me, this is a lie. Nancy Pelosi yesterday said, quote, thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice. She also said, quote, that his name will always be synonymous with justice. George Floyd's name will always be synonymous with justice. You have got to be kidding me. And don't tell me it doesn't matter. It does matter. This is the most important part, that he is now becoming synonymous with justice. Let me remind you guys, I've done it before, right? When the media was spinning all the lies and the media first came out and they said, oh, George Floyd was just getting his life together. He moved to Minnesota. He got released from prison in 2014. He was just getting his life together. You remember that? Do you guys remember that media depiction of St. George, who was just doing things for kids and just loved the kids and really was trying to set a good example and was just getting his life together? Until I reminded people of what his actual record was, because it became apparent to me that there was a reason that they were not producing the police footage, because they wanted to make sure that the lie was perpetuated around the world and repeated over and over again before the truth could get up from bed and put its shoes on. And here is the truth. Here is the person whose life and whose name is now synonymous with justice, Nancy Pelosi. George Floyd has a rap sheet, and I'm going to remind you guys of it again today. He was arrested for delivery of a controlled substance. He was arrested and put into jail. He was arrested for theft. He was arrested for theft again. He spent 10 months and 10 days in jail. He was arrested for failure to identify. He spent 15 days in jail. He was again arrested for possession of a controlled substance, less than 1 gram of cocaine. He was then arrested for trespassing, no forcible entry. He was arrested for delivery of a controlled substance. He was arrested for possession with intent to manufacture or distribute, another 30 months in jail total. He was arrested for aggravated robbery with a dangerous and deadly weapon. And that has really got to be the most significant arrest for me because of how sick what he did was. Ready? Here's a statement. At this time, a black Ford Explorer pulled up in front of the complainant's residence. The complainant that we're talking about, the woman, had somebody knock on her door and say that they were from the water department. And then that person forced their way into her home. And then a Ford Explorer pulled up. And there were 5 other black males that exited this vehicle and proceeded to the front door. The largest of these suspects forced his way into the residence. This is George Floyd. Forced his way into the residence, placed a pistol against the complainant's abdomen, and forced her into the living room area of the residence. The large suspect then proceeded to search the residence while another armed suspect guarded the complainant, who was struck in the head and side areas by the second armed suspect with his pistol after she screamed for help. I should also mention that there was a toddler in the residence at the time that this happened. A toddler that was traumatized by what George Floyd did. A woman who was traumatized by what George Floyd did. Various people who were traumatized throughout the life of George Floyd. He left a wake of victims. That is what happened. He had so many victims throughout his life, but right now, the world has decided that he's just a wonderful human being. You're not allowed to talk about his record. Not allowed to talk about any of things. There are children that are running around with George Floyd shirts. There are murals that have been constructed dedicated to George Floyd because his name has now become synonymous with justice. I guess my question is, justice for who? How do I do that? How do I live a life so that people say Candace Owens' name is synonymous for justice? It's not telling the truth. People hate that. People say you're not allowed to say it. You're not allowed to talk about who this person actually was because the media has agreed on a narrative before the truth has gotten out about who this man was. Getting his life together? Is anybody still buying that anymore? Oh, no, never mind. It actually turns out that at the time of his arrest, he had fentanyl in his system. He also had methamphetamine in his system. We also learned that the week prior, he had had an overdose. But none of that matters because now we live under mob rule. Mob rule just says that if a black man dies and a white person is around while that black person dies, it is a racially motivated crime. They've never proved that. Nothing about this was about race at all. But it doesn't matter because now George Floyd has been propped up, and this is what we have to agree on. Nobody's allowed to tell the truth. Why are they doing this? Why can't we honestly have an assessment and come to an agreement, by the way? I would have been perfectly comfortable if people said Derek Chauvin was guilty of manslaughter. I'm comfortable with that charge. I'm not comfortable with the lies that have been told repeatedly about who this man was. If you care about black lives, if you're watching us thinking, Candace, I just care about black lives, then why can't we discuss black criminality at the same time? Because usually on the other end of black criminality is a black victim. That was the case with Jacob Blake. That was the case over and over again with George Floyd. That's also the case with, and let's talk about the person that was trending all last night and all this morning, Ma'Khia Bryant, is that her name? The woman, the young woman that they're now saying, a 16-year-old girl in Columbus, Ohio, who was shot on Tuesday by police. Did you guys see the clip of her mother? She was shot and killed by police because she was attempting to stab another girl. It's on camera. She was a knife-wielding maniac, but those details don't matter. Don't forget, because her mother came out and said that Ma'Khia had a motherly nature about her. She promoted peace. Ma'Khia Bryant's mother wants you to know that the knife-wielding maniac that you saw is not who she really was. Maybe in that moment she was trying to kill somebody, but the point that we should be focused on is that Ma'Khia Bryant liked to promote peace in her spare time.
I'm glad she said that Ma'Khia was a knife-wielding maniac, because that's exactly the term I was using, is knife-wielding. She had a knife. She was going to stab that girl. and the police officer shot her to protect the unarmed girl. And I am going to talk about this knife fight nonsense that we need to accept, apparently, that, hey, some kids are going to get in knife fights, and it's just the way it is. Stand back and let them fight, I guess. Stab, stab, stab. Good grief. What are they talking about? What the hell are they talking about? That's nonsense. We're not going to put up with that. We're not going to live like that. The 16-year-old, yeah, you know, when you say 16-year-old, you think sweetness and light and, you know, we should be able to get through life without killing a 16-year-old girl. But she was virile. I've got some audio here that just came in from my friend Barbara, friend and listener to the program. But and it's Larry Elder talking about the evil, the danger of demonizing the police. But first, I want to play this thing here. This is Ma'Khia Bryant's mother. And this is pitiful. I've read a bunch of articles, and Ma'Khia was in a foster home. So what happened? Somehow her mother was not raising her. I don't know if she ran out of money, put her up for adoption. I don't know any of the details whatsoever. But if your daughter isn't at home being raised by you, you screwed up somehow. Somehow you messed up. And your daughter has been shot by police because she was a knife-wielding maniac. And you did something wrong. That's what we heard a couple of shows ago. We heard the audio we played, I guess it was one show ago, on Audio Mayhem Day, where we played the audio from Officer Tatum. And he was talking about this very thing, that the parents are responsible. When a kid goes this far gone, the parents are responsible. So let's hear a little bit of this interview with Ma'Khia Bryant's mother. And there it is right there.
On your mask, you have your daughter's full name. What was her full name?
Yes, I do.
I can't read it.
Okay. Her name was Ma'Khia, and she's named after a male prophet in the Bible. And her middle name, she has two middle names. That is our family tradition. And it's Zyriana Tylea Bryant.
And is there family significance or other significance to those names?
Yes, you know, that runs in my family tradition of two middle names. So I'm a single mother of 5 kids, and, you know, now Ma'Khia is gone, and I only have 4 kids. And I can't. That is so hard for me to say.
Let me ask you this. For people who are learning about your daughter as a function of this incident, in this midst of this big national conversation about policing, and what do you want people to know?
The killing needs to stop. There's been too many killings in the world. I want the killing to stop. I've always had sympathy for the Breonna Taylor story and her family and her friends and her situation. And now I know what it feels like to lose a child. Ma'Khia is gone. And I want the killing in the world to stop. And that's what Ma'Khia would want. Ma'Khia was peaceful. She was loving. She wanted everybody to get along. She was a Christian.
What?
Ma'Khia was peaceful. She was loving. She wanted everybody to get along. She was a Christian. Micaiah was peaceful. She was loving. She wanted everybody to get along. She was a Christian.
What?
Micaiah was peaceful. She was loving. She wanted everybody to get along. She was a Christian.
Stop it, I said!
Micaiah was peaceful. She was loving. She wanted everybody to get along. She was a Christian.
Au contraire, baby.
Micaiah was peaceful. She was loving. She wanted everybody to get along. She was a Christian.
What a load of crap.
Micaiah was peaceful. She was loving. She wanted everybody to get along. She was a Christian.
Absolute nonsense. What a load of fatuous nonsense.
Micaiah was peaceful. She was loving. She wanted everybody to get along. She was a Christian.
Don't want to deal with a lot of flippity-flab or mumbo-jumbo.
Micaiah was peaceful. She was loving. She wanted everybody to get along. She was a Christian.
What a load. What a load. What a load of crap.
Jimmy Z. Leo Terrell.
In sum, is that if the Democrats do not play the race card, they have no party. That's the only card they can play.
The Jimmy Z Show.
He's a transgender from Rochester, and he used to be a girl, but she didn't like her world, so she's given up her pearls, and she's a man, and her name is Stan. She's a transgender from Rochester, and he used to be a guy, and she thought that she was bi, and her gender made her cry. Now she's a dame, and her name is Jane. All right, that's enough.
The Jimmy Z Show is produced, written, and directed by Jimmy Z. The show is wholly owned by Jimmy Z. All rights reserved. Content from other sources belong to the copyright holder and or speaker. In each case, Jimmy Z can be reached via email at thejimmyzshow@gmail.com.
Jimmy Z. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Jimmy Z and the Big Jimmy Z Show. After a week of lying in bed. God, talk about feeling like a slug. Oh, man, I hate that. And this hasn't happened. I've got to give credit to my trainer at the gym because we've worked in many ways on different machines and whatnot to strengthen my back, and this has not happened for well over a year. I think it might be over a year and a half that my back went out. And but before I was going to the gym, my back went out bad once every about 4 months. So things have improved quite a bit. Still, though, I would rather not go through it, but I can't complain too much with the improvement, obvious improvement. All right, what was I going to touch on here real quick before I play the audio from Larry Elder? Oh, I know what I was going to say. That woman is talking about how she wants the killing to stop. Well, the police officer stopped it. Did he not? Now, of course, her daughter died because she was about to stab someone to death. But the police officer stopped some killing, stopped a murder. At the very least, stopped a severe assault. And so, look, here's the way you stop the killing. Okay? You raise your children. If you dare to have children, and she has 5, she's an unwed mother with 5 children. Okay, this is the problem. I'm going to say it, and somebody's going to attack me. Maybe somebody will hear this and get my show taken off of Facebook, but I'm going to say it. This is one of the big problems within the black community. No families, no fathers. A mother, unwed, with 5 children, and at least one of them, Makia, in a foster home. She's not been raised. So if you want to change this, if you want to stop the killing, like you claim, raise your children. Teach your children not to be criminals. Teach your children that it's wrong to pick up a knife and try to stab somebody you're having an argument with over an unmade bed. That's what this was about. Makia called the police because they were having this argument about an unmade bed. And I'm not saying that the girl in the pink jumpsuit, she might not be innocent at all. She wasn't guilty of picking up a knife, but who knows how nasty she was? Who knows? So this was 2 people who could not get along, and Makia went nuts. She went rabid, and she was going to stab. If you watch the video, the whole video from across the street, it's amazing. It happened so fast, and the police officer shows up, and he had just a few seconds, and all of a sudden he's shooting because she was pinning the girl in the pink jumpsuit up against the car, and she had a knife, and she was going for it. So the way you stop the killing that has been going on way too long, and we can talk about Chicago, we can talk about black on black crime, well over 90% of all blacks that are murdered or shot, rather. Well over 90% of blacks who are shot by other blacks. So the problem, and I've told people this in discussion on Facebook, and boy, they don't want to hear it. But I have said, look, you need to look inside your community first. You need to do the cleaning up inside your community. Because you look within first, then you can look without and find out what else is going on. But the first thing you have to do is start raising your kids, teach your kids not to be criminals, not to go on drugs, not to become gang members. And then if you do make a stupid decision, which Makia made a stupid decision, George Floyd made a stupid decision, Daunte Wright made a stupid decision, and a bunch of them, most of these people, made a bunch of stupid decisions over a long period of time. And so if you make stupid decisions and the cops show up and they catch you doing something, or they have a warrant for your arrest, here's an idea: cooperate. When the officer says, put your hands behind your back, do it. Look, I don't live the life of a criminal, but it's possible. I don't think it's very possible, but it's certainly possible that I would be pulled over for something one day, driving along, and then somebody says, hey, this guy in a silver sedan just robbed a bank. And he has long blonde hair, and he's driving up Harbor Boulevard. So they pull me over, guns drawn, put your hands behind your back. Yes, sir. Well, they wouldn't say that while you're sitting in the car. When I get pulled over, and I haven't been pulled over for a long time, but I always keep my both hands on the steering wheel. I roll down the window. If it's at night, I turn on the interior lights so they can see what's going on. A friend of mine, this guy I have breakfast with every weekend, was saying that one time he pulled over at night and he turns on the interior lights, and the cop walks up and says, why did you turn on the interior lights? And he said, because I want you to be able to see where my hands are. You can see inside the vehicle. I'm being cooperative. So when the police officer says, get out of the car, I'm getting out of the car. If they say, put your hands behind your back, I'm putting my hands behind my back. I'm cooperating, yes, sir. And I'm being polite the whole time. I'm not being snide. I'm not being rude. I'm not telling him that, look, pig, you can go do something else. Go bother somebody else. I didn't do anything wrong. They'll figure it out. They will figure out that you're the wrong guy. Where are you coming from? My house. Where are you going? Jack in the Box. What are you doing? Getting a burger. But you've got to teach your kids how to live life. And you can't teach your kids if the family isn't together. You cannot have a family where you teach children how to negotiate life. It's just ridiculous. It's so sad. It's pathetic. And it makes me angry. And then they blame the police after all the things that have gone wrong for generations within the black community. They're going to blame the police for the problem? No. You blame the parents. I'm tempted to play Officer Tatum again. But you can go back and you can get that show. It's sitting on the Jimmy Z Show Facebook page. I think that would be show number 42. The parents are to blame. If your child is out running around with a gun illegally, threatening people with a gun, choking a woman, and putting a gun to her face to rob her, the parents failed that 20-year-old. The mother and father failed Makia Bryant. They failed her. They did not give her the tools to negotiate with life, and she's pulling a knife on another woman. And now she's dead. Because the officer did the right thing. He had half a second to think, and then blam. He saved the other girl's life. I hope she takes this as an opportunity to live her life productively and to make good decisions. That's what it's all about, kids. Making good decisions instead of shitty ones. Instead of making decisions that set you on a lifetime of violent crime. I've had enough. She's a Christian girl. She's all for peace and love. Yeah, right. She was peacefully about to stab this girl. In a very Christian way, she picked up a knife to stab her. God, I can't stand it. What a load of fatuous nonsense indeed, Piers Morgan. All right, let's listen to Larry Elder on this idea that systemic racism in the police department, in police departments nationwide, is a dangerous lie.
When you look at the numbers, it paints a very different picture. There are roughly 50 million civilian police interactions in America every year and a population of around 350 million people. That results into 11 million arrests. 60,000 officers are assaulted every year. And last year, between 50 and 60 officers were killed by civilians. Out of all of that, the police kill, on average, according to the Washington Post, 1,000 people per year. 500 of them are white, 250 of them are black. So the police kill twice as many whites as they kill blacks, and the police kill more unarmed whites every year than they kill unarmed blacks. It's that the media does not care when an unarmed white person is killed, but when an unarmed black person is killed, they act as if it's some sort of referendum on the police. In fact, out of the 7,000 homicide victims last year, black, and that's 50% of the total homicide victims in America, out of 13% of the population come 50% of the homicide victims. That's roughly 7,000 black homicide victims last year. Out of that number, the number of black unarmed people killed by cops, 1/3 of 1%. Most blacks in America are killed by other blacks, just as most whites in America, when they're killed, are killed by other whites. It is a lie that the police are engaging in some sort of systemic racism against black people. It has been studied for decades. There's a very long piece in the Washington Post dated specifically April 27, 2016. I know that because that's my birthday, April 27, not the 2016 part. But a long article about the series of tests and interviews with officers going back over decades, showing, if anything, the police are more hesitant, more reluctant to pull the trigger on a black suspect than a white suspect. There are a group of researchers from a university called Washington State University. They've done this experiment over decades, 3 different times, spaced over several years. Each time, same result. The cops are 3 times more hesitant to pull the trigger on a black suspect than a white suspect. The number one cause of preventable death for young whites in America is accidents, like car accidents. The number one cause of preventable death for young blacks in America is homicide. a young black man is 8 to 10 times more likely to be a victim of a homicide than a young white man. That's why the cops are there. It is an absolute lie that the police are engaging in systemic racism against blacks. And it's not just this harmless lie, it's a dangerous lie, because what happens is the police pull back when they're victims of these false accusations. It's called the Ferguson effect, and now it's called the George Floyd effect, where every time one of these high-profile shootings take place and the cops are falsely accused of engaging in systemic racism, the police pull back and they just respond to radio calls. They don't drive around looking to be proactive. Why should they? They're going to put themselves in the middle of something. They could be accused of racism, so to hell with it. Crime goes up. Bad guys know it. They're out in the streets. And what happens is young black men are coached, trained to believe that the police are out to get them. So when you're pulled over and you're a young black man, instead of it being just an ordinary police stop, it escalates into something far more serious, because you don't believe that the officer is there to protect and serve. You believe that the officer is an enemy. So what you're doing is training young black people not to cooperate, and therefore these incidents escalate into something far more deadly. Virtually every one of these incidents, guys, whether it's Eric Gardner in New York, or Michael Brown in Ferguson, or George Floyd in Minneapolis, or Jacob Blake in Atlanta, virtually every one of these things would have been avoided had the young black men simply complied. And if they felt that they were mistreated, get a name, get a badge number, and resolve it later on. Instead, the so-called leaders, including Joe Biden, are throwing gasoline on all of this by lying about what the police are doing and making things far, far worse. So the reaction to the allegation of systemic racism, gentlemen, is far, far worse than the actual presence of systemic racism.
Okay, now I think it's important to point out something here. And first, if you want to find this is an hour-long interview on YouTube, and you search for Larry Elder, Police Systemic Racism is a Dangerous Lie. And the channel is Triggernometry. That's trigger, and then nometry, a play on words, of course, there. Barbara points out that this is a show from the UK, and that these two guys who are the hosts were liberal, but have lost most of their liberal friends. They can see the crazy turn that the world has taken, but others do not. And they interview people, and today the interview was Larry Elder. So that's a really great soundbite there. I might have to take a couple of clips from that. Larry Elder really knows what he's talking about. All right, so this program turns out to be audio mayhem again. I did not intend for that to be that way, but it just ended up that way. And that's how it ended up, the way that it is. Audio mayhem.
It's audio mayhem.
All right, this is an interesting story at the New York Post. And I first read this on Facebook, and I thought, okay, well, that's The Onion. Or that's the, I forget what the other satire website is. But I thought for sure this was satire. Black Lives Matter protesters in Minnesota dropped to a knee and set off to march over a fatal police shooting, only to return when they learned it was a white carjacker who had been fired at by police. According to reports, dozens of people protesting outside Governor Tim Walz's mansion in St. Paul on Sunday were filmed by Fox 9 reporter Mitty Hicks as they knelt for a moment of silence over initial rumors about Sunday's 3 p.m. fatal shooting. She reported, protesters kneel after hearing that there was an officer-involved shooting in Burnsville moments ago. This information has not been confirmed, but this group says they are heading there. The man who was killed is believed to be a white man in his 20s who had stolen a car from a woman at gunpoint, then repeatedly shot at cops as they chased him. Traffic camera footage shared by KARE 11 showed the suspect leaping out of the still-moving stolen car, then running into the road and seemingly pointing his gun at an approaching SUV before he was shot multiple times by police officers. The Black Lives Matter marchers, riled by local police-involved deaths since the George Floyd and Daunte Wright shootings, soon appeared to get word that the latest shooting was not one fit for protest because because the criminal who was shot by police was white. And so who cares, right? God, I hate those people. Black Lives Matter. It's not about black lives. It's about causing trouble. It's about ending the justice system. It's about shutting down police departments all across the country. And, because of that, I think it would be a good idea for police to just pull out. If Black Lives Matter comes in and starts raising hell in a certain neighborhood, then the police should just say, okay, it's yours. You can have it. And back out and let Black Lives Matter run the neighborhood. And as it becomes worse and worse and worse, the people who live there and the people who work there are going to beg the police to come back. And I think it's time that the police use this tactic. Okay, the next piece of audio I have is this 19-year-old climate activist. She was invited to speak by Potato Joe Biden at his virtual climate summit, and she criticized world leaders Thursday for perpetuating environmental damage to the planet. And every time I listen to one of these bozos, I think, wow, I should play George Carlin again. The George Carlin Earth Day piece. Because George makes so much sense when you're talking about the globe, when you're talking about the earth, and how we're causing all this damage. We're not. We're absolutely not causing damage. The earth is very good at cleaning itself. Anyway, you got to hear this. This young woman, is born in Mexico. She's a climate activist, and one of her goals is to become, what do you guess? That's right, a politician. She wants to go to Washington and represent people with this hogwash.
As much as it is a great opportunity, it is also a great responsibility. I did not want to stand here and read our concerns and demands, because if you had been listening, you would know what they are. Nevertheless, I think that it is important for all of us to be on the same page from now and moving forward. The climate crisis is the result of those perpetuating and upholding the harmful systems of colonialism, oppression, capitalism, and market-oriented greenwash solutions. The 40 leaders who are in this summit are in the majority from the global north, which has historically perpetuated these systems.
And it's from this point, from these talking points, that this young whippersnapper, this idiot, the climate crisis is the result of those perpetrating and upholding the harmful systems of colonialism, oppression, capitalism, and market-oriented greenwashed solutions. Yeah, she thought of those words herself. 19 years old. God, it's just a shame, isn't it, what they have filled this young woman's head with? All this nonsense. And she's going to take this and become a politician. And she's going to fight for this green crapola. I just can't take it. But this is where we jump into and I can't do it today, but this is where we go from her talking points into what John Kerry has been saying now, is that we need to accept these migrants into our country because they are leaving their country because of climate change. Climate change is causing all of this migration. Climate change. And you know what climate change is? The overall temperature of the globe has increased by a fraction of a degree. All right? And it's because of that, all of the ice is going to melt, and all these cities, who was it? Excuse me. Somebody just said, somebody posted this prediction that came up in 1998, I think it was, that if we didn't do something by the year 2000, that entire countries were going to be underwater by now. And of course, it was going to happen 10, 15 years ago. And of course, it hasn't happened, but nobody gets called out on being so freaking wrong. Completely and totally wrong. So I got to get into what John Kerry was saying next time, and we'll see when that is. I feel pretty good right now, but I'm going to stretch out and lay down for a bit and then come back and put together, do the post-production on this hour. So I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for taking this program and sharing it with your relatives, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, anyone that you think could use a little more of the truth. And until next time, from the right wing on the left coast, Jimmy Z saying bye-bye for now, everybody.
Jimmy Z.
Micaiah was peaceful. She was loving. She wanted everybody to get along. She was a Christian.
What?
Isn't that something? Isn't that something? Isn't that something?
Oh, we are the boys in chorus. We hope you like our show. We know you're rooting for us, but now we have to go.
There's an hour you'll never get.